Hey there, welcome to this talk. We are going to be talking about the Jamstack on DigitalOcean. So I'm having so much fun writing JavaScript, writing Jamstack type applications, but there's a problem when I'm writing these Jamstack apps is yes, it's very cool to build out a static site or a React or a Vue JavaScript front end, but then as soon as I want to take this app and make it a little bit more robust, give it a little bit more features, a backend API, give it a database, store some data, that's where things start to fall apart in the Jamstack world. And you might be saying, well, Chris, the J stands for JavaScript, the A stands for API. So you should just go grab another API when we want to store data or have some sort of CMS back our static front end site. And I totally agree with that. I love that. But the thing is that APIs, people usually say, well, reach for a headless CMS. In this talk, I want to talk about reaching and grabbing for something that isn't really a headless CMS. I want to talk about building our own backend. So with that in mind, I kind of want to talk about something that's a little bit beyond Jamstack. I kind of am playing around with some wording for this. Full stack Jamstack is something which can be combined to, I guess, FamStack, which doesn't make sense. Or another term that I like that's been kicked around is Jamstack++, which is where you actually build out your backend and then deploy everything together. So this approach is what we're going to talk about in this talk. Jamstack++ on DigitalOcean is totally possible thanks to App Platform. So if we talk about our agenda today, we will deploy a React app. And this is going to be a super basic app, nothing to it, just some design and some text. And then we're going to say, well, what if we wanted to add a feature? Let's say we wanted to make this a guest book and have people post to it and basically make it like a message list. We would need to bring in an API so that people could create a message. And then we would need a part of the API so that we could grab all the messages. And then we'd return all of that to React. React would go ahead and display all that fun stuff. So the question is here, okay, well, what do I reach for? Some might say I need an API to create and read and update and delete. Maybe I could reach for something like Prismic, maybe. Would that do it? Would Sanity do it? And I'm sure you could figure out how to make a headless CMS work as a CRUD type application. Headless CMSs are traditionally really good at being able to back our blogs, our e-commerce sites, our portfolios. But when we want to make applications that are a little more dynamic, that have a little bit different data requirements, it makes sense to start building out our own APIs. So to build out our own API, I'm going to bring in a tool that I really love, and that's going to be Laravel API. So Laravel is going to build out our API, really big fan of it. I founded a website called Scotch.io, and Scotch.io is a web development tutorial blog, totally built in Laravel. And it's a ton of fun to write Laravel applications. So this stack really is going to be, let's do a Laravel app plus a React front end. And since it's a Laravel app, we need to store data somewhere. We're going to add in a Postgres database. So that's going to be what we're going to do in the next about 20 minutes. So to start us off, I already have a repo called Guest Book React. I kind of want to deploy that. I really like starting with the deploy just so I can see something online and have a quick win. So if I go over to my Chrome over here, here's kind of the app that we'll be deploying. Welcome to App Platform, Guestbook by DigitalOcean. And this is just a React app, nothing fancy, no CRUD or APIs involved yet. So here in App Platform is DigitalOcean's platform as a service that lets us deploy applications from a GitHub repo. So let's get started. We'll launch our app. We'll select a repo, and this is amazing because if you were deploying a repo, a GitHub repo to DigitalOcean before, you would create your droplet, you would SSH in, create some new SSH keys for GitHub, and then do the clone. And then you would have to do some kind of fancy footwork to go grab data on every push to the repo. So here, I'm just going to say guestbook. And you can see I have the Laravel one here and the React one here. I click on the React one. Let's click next. All right, so we can name our app, pick a branch to deploy. That sounds good. We'll keep this as the name. Actually, we'll just call it guest book. And then region, we're going to call out New York because I'm in the US and that's going to be closest to me. Branch, I'm going to use the master branch, auto deploy code changes. This one click is amazing right here because we can deploy on every single push to our GitHub repo. So I'll click next here. All right, so a Node.js site is detected. It says, do you want a web service? No, I kind of want a static site for this one. So we'll add a static site, and static sites have a CDN. Environment variables, which is cool. We can add them here. We don't really have any right now, but we will have to add some later, and we'll talk about that. And yarn build is our build command. Okay, so add a database. We don't need it right now. We have a static site, and it doesn't need a database. The Laravel app that we're about to deploy is going to have the database. So I'll click next here. So static sites we can deploy as free. There are also a basic tier and a pro tier for our accounts. Right now, we'll stick with the starter account. I'll go down here. Monthly app cost is 0. So we're deploying this React app, and it'll be free for us. And with these starter apps, you get 3 free starter apps. So that's 3 sites. And then we can start adding on different components to it. And we'll talk about components in the app platform world soon. Guestbook has been created. We see our guestbook here, which is the name of our app. We see it building, and we are deploying from GitHub to DigitalOcean just like that. All right, so we have our application deployed successfully here. And if we click on this app right here, here's our URL. We can click that and get taken to our website, which is our new app platform guestbook. All right, so that's super cool. And then now let's add in some dynamic data. So if we go over here, we want to make sure that we can add in an API and a database because that's what's going to be our backend to this React front end, right? And we talked about a Laravel and a Postgres database. So I'm going to work a little bit locally here. So let's go ahead and jump into some code before we get back to some deployments. If we go over here, I'm going to go back to VS Code, and I have 2 up, and this purple pinkish one is our Laravel app, our backend, and then this blue one is our React app. So I'll click on a React app. Let's have a walkthrough of this code real quick. So right here in our main application component, there's really nothing to it. There's just some Tailwind CSS classes here, and there's our header. So the things we need to do are show a form to create a message and show all messages. All right, easy enough. And I've stubbed out a little bit of these things here so we're not writing too much in this demo. First off, we need to make sure that we have an API to pull from. So let's jump into Laravel over here. I'm going to go ahead and open the api.php routes file. And this is kind of where everything starts in Laravel. So we have the route and the message. So we're going to essentially create 2 routes here. One for, and I'll zoom in here, one for get all messages, and one for create a message. So in Laravel, it's really cool to build an API with Laravel because it comes with an Eloquent ORM, which is its object relational mapper. So basically what I'm trying to say is route get messages function return message all. So that's how we can return all messages right here. So let's go ahead and test this. This, since it's in the api.php file, we can just go to here, guest book Laravel -test.test. And this is me working locally, so I can just test it out before we push to production messages. And that gets us a 404 not found. Okay, and that's because I spelled Laravel wrong right here. Cool. So all of these are here. That's just dummy data that I seeded the database with. So I did a little bit of setup here so you didn't have to see me setting up the database, setting up the message model. So we'll go back over to Laravel, and we need to make sure that we are going to create a message as well. So we'll say route. And with creation HTTP methods, get is when you want to get data. Post is when you want to create data. So messages is the route function right here. Okay. So I am going to say data is equal to request, and let's pull out some text. So this API is going to say, hey, send me some text and I'll create a message. Okay. Then we'll say message is equal to message create data. And then we can say return the message. And we can actually simplify this a little bit by taking all of that and pasting it right in there. There we go. So just like that, Laravel has let us do a little bit of CRUD, which is just the create part and the read part. So that looks good. Another really cool thing we can do with Laravel is, let's say we have a ton of messages in our database. We can say, okay, I only want you to take the latest 10. And then also, let's say latest only and get. So latest kind of sorts it by the latest created at date. Laravel's really cool at the helper type stuff that it gives us. Okay, so that's good enough for our API. So I'm going to go into my Git panel right here and say API done, and I'll push that up. So now that this is on GitHub, I'm going to go over and deploy this in App Platform. So we're going to go over here to App Platform again, right here. And to add a component, which is going to be a Laravel service. So let's talk about that verbiage. If we go to this components tab right here, you can see that this is our main React site. If I click over to create component, there are 4 different components we can create right now in App Platform. So there's a service, which is what our Laravel API is going to be, a worker, and the difference between these two, they're pretty similar, except that a service is publicly accessible and a worker is privately accessible. A static site, which is what we just did. We deployed a React application. And then the database we're also going to do here. So let's start with the database. Our Laravel app is going to need to connect to something. So we'll go database. And you can have a dev database or an existing database, which is any of the databases you have in your DigitalOcean dashboard. I'm going to stick with the dev database right now. We'll call it DB. And this is important to know what name you're giving it, because we're going to use it when we set environment variables on the Laravel app. So I'll do create and attach. All right, so we have our database deployed now successfully right here. We see our component down here, and you can even go down here and see your connection parameters. So here's the host, the port, username, password, database, SSL mode. You can even get it as a connection string, so you can copy and paste this wherever you need to use it. Now that we have our database, so that is the second component in this app, and you can start to see why this is called App Platform, because it's a platform for literally launching your full stack apps. We have a front end, we have a backend database. Now let's add in a service, which is our backend API. And all again from a GitHub repo, I'll go for guest book Laravel. So we grab that thing right there, go next. We'll use the master branch right here. All right, so this is where it gets really fun. We can configure our PHP app here. So HTTP routes is a really cool feature of App Platform. Since we're deploying multiple repos to a single app, we have to say, okay, well, this app is going to live at what URL, and the other app is going to live at what URL. So our React app right here is living at guest-book-t9nt.nt3.ondigitalocean.app. So this React app lives at the /route, and that's totally fine. So where do we want our Laravel app to live? Let's put it at /app, so that the /app route is going to be our backend and the /route is going to be our front end. And what's cool here is you can deploy a bunch of different apps and give it a bunch of different routes. Like let's say we deployed a blog, we could put that at /blog, or if we deployed a different GitHub repo, we can put that as maybe /job board if you built out a job board. Lots of cool opportunities here using routes. So I'm going to go down here. I'm changing this to /app right here. So now you can see this is the route HTTPS guestbook T9NT3. I can't read that /app right there. And you can go ahead and change this out for a custom domain later. So you can say something like mysite.com/app. So that's good right there. I'll close that out. Environment variables, we have database URL automatically added for us, but we're going to do a little bit more here. Laravel apps need an app name. I guess it's not really required. You can add whatever in your app here. So I'll leave that out. What they do need though is an app URL so it knows where it lives. And we have a magic variable from app platform where we can just say app URL so that this app URL right up here gets populated into that variable there. So we're going to take that app URL, and since our app is going to live at /app, we'll tell Laravel that's where you're going to live. So next up is app key is a required one for Laravel, and I'll just paste in one that I have from my local app. And we'll go for some more to connect to the database. So you could set this up to use database URL right here, but I'm going to go in and use each specific variable. So let's call them out right here. Database connection is something that Laravel can use right here. And that's how you specify, I want Postgres or MySQL or whatever you're using. I'm going to say db_host. I'm going to say db_port, db_database. Let's go for a couple more. And I believe we need username and password. Oh, that's supposed to be all caps. And password here. All right, so since we called that database DB, this is how we can access those variables for that specific service. So we're going to say DB. Oh, sorry, this one is going to be hard-coded in PGSQL. We want a Postgres database here, and then host is db.hostname. I'm going to copy this and paste these all in. We'll go for port. This is going to be DB database, and we have username. And if you're wondering how I know these variable names, they are in the app platform docs. Very helpful there. I'm going to go for password, and that's going to be enough for our environment variables. There we go. Build command for a Laravel app. We're going to run composer install. And then we also want to migrate this database. So we're going to say PHP artisan migrate force. All right. Now let's hit next and let's see what happens. We have to select a pricing for this specific component. So the way the app platform works is we're going to have an app level plan, and then each component is priced out according to the size we want, how many we want. So it's very flexible in its pricing. Since this is a prototype type app, we're going to stay on the basic approach. Here's our basic size for containers at $5 a month. And I'm going to go for next for the web service. We now have our Laravel app deployed. Super, super cool here. So we have Laravel backend API. We have a React frontend, Postgres database. Let's see our app now. So no changes here. We still have the React frontend at this /route. So if I did /app, we should be able to see our Laravel app, and we do now. And if we now go to /API/messages, we should have our live API, which has no data. Okay, so we have a command in Laravel to get some dummy data into this messages. So we're going to go over here, and usually you would SSH into your droplet to go run some PHP commands in the Laravel app. Right here, we can say, let's go into our console and load this up. Here we are in our Laravel root for the GitHub repo that we just deployed, and I'll just run PHP artisan db seed right there. Application is in production. Do I want to run this command? Let's go for yes. Database seeding completed successfully. So that just threw a lot of dummy data into our API. So I'll go back over here. Where is it? There we are. And I'll press refresh here. And there we go. Dummy data in an API that is live and running. Super, super amazing stuff here. And we did all of it from a GitHub repo. So let's go to our React app and let's go grab all this stuff from our new API. So here we are back in VS Code in the React app. And I'm working locally again just because I want to test out our API locally. So I'm going to go into app.js, and I stubbed out a lot of stuff. I know we're getting to the end of this conference talk, so I definitely want to speed this up here. We have a form, so we have message form. And to do this, we're going to pass in a prop called add message. And I'll show you, we'll make all of these real quick. Show all messages. I'm going to show a messages component, and I'm going to pass it a messages prop. Okay. So the next step here is to make sure that we go up here. Get messages is this API call that we have here. So in React, if we want to store stuff in state, we're going to say, and I'll zoom in here, const messages set messages is equal to useState. And I'll start as an empty array. And then we're going to say on load, we're going to say go grab get messages. And then we are going to say .then set messages. Okay, so that should be enough to go grab data from our local API. And then the next step to this is we need to add a message. So let's create that function right now. We'll say add message. And we'll get passed a message. And these two repos, the React app and the Laravel app, are available for public use. You can find them on my personal GitHub account, and we can fork them over to the DigitalOcean account. But if you want to get them, you can definitely message me at twitter.com/ChrisOnCode. I'd be happy to get you the code for both of these apps so you can see kind of the magic where I'm like hiding things in these components. So function add message, we're going to say set message is, and I'm just going to create a new array, pass in the new message, and pass in the old messages. So that basically adds a message to the top of the list. All right, let's give this a shot. Let's go over here, refresh, and there we go. We have our messages in our local API. So I'm going to say this is really cool. Okay, so that updated our messages. So this is all working locally. The last step to all of this is I'm going to git commit all this. We'll go back into our dashboard. We'll watch that get deployed, and everything should be good. So let's go over here. I'm going to go into my Git panel and say everything is good. I'll do a push right here. And then we'll go back over to our DigitalOcean app platform dashboard, and we'll just go up here. And there we go. Immediately we start to see the building process because our app is being built, all based on a GitHub push. Our React app has deployed successfully thanks to that GitHub push. And if we go to overview, we should see everything working out just fine. Everything's healthy. All right, let's go see our app again, see if we can't get any messages. It looks like something's wrong here. So there's some console errors. Let's go check. All right, so it says that the guestbook was loaded over HTTPS, but it loaded information from guestbook Laravel/API/messages. So the problem here is that this is the wrong API URL. Let's go fix that right now. You just go into here, components, into our React app, into environment variables, and we're going to say React app API URL. And we're going to copy this whole thing right here, paste it over here, and it lives at /app/API. So this HTTPS right here is going to be the environment variable that our React app hits, because that's going to point to the Laravel API. I'll click save here. That will update our component. It'll rebuild itself and make sure everything's good. Our new update from our environment variables has deployed. Let's give our app a shot again. All right, there we go. We have our React app. We're pulling from our Laravel API that we deployed, and it's going to a Postgres database. App platform is equal to awesome. Okay, so add message there, gets added there. Very, very good stuff. And then if I go to the API right here, I refresh this. There we go. There's our new message in our database, in our API, showing up in the React front end, all from app platform, just clicking and deploying some GitHub repos. So I think this is amazing. I think that the Jamstack has needed something like this where you can easily add a backend API and a database to a front-end app. I'm really excited to keep building with App Platform. I'm really excited to see how you all build with App Platform as well. Thanks for watching this talk.